uncertainty there. You'd have two uncreated spirits. Again, that doesn't align well with biblical thought as well, because there's only one uncreated being, all right? And of course, it's not, oppositional. You don't have two in this dualistic system. Willard Oxtoby defines dualism as, quote, a conception of the universe which postulates two ultimate principles, seen as opposed to each other and more or less evenly matched, unquote. A key text is Yasna 30, verse 3, quote, now these two spirits, which are twins, revealed themselves at first in a vision, unquote. So that's the end of, Yamauchi's section. I've also put up in the protected folder an article by Almut Hintze, which is entitled Monotheism, the Zoroastrian Way. It's from the Journal of the Royal Asiatic Society, volume 24, number 2, April 2014. So it's fairly recent. And again, that article kind of describes the same sorts of things, but there's more detail to it. So this really doesn't align very well. A lot of what you'll read on Zoroastrianism would basically comes down to this notion of, well, yeah, it's kind of monotheistic except where it isn't. So you have this tension, and again, scholars still to this day disagree on how to characterize it. So the uncertainty of it doesn't really make it a good platform for comparison.
Our next question is from Marion in New Mexico. What is Mike's opinion on the lost chapter of Acts found in Constantinople?
Well, not much. Basically, I don't know how else to say it. Basically, this is British Israelite nonsense. If I did a search for, Acts 29 and Constantinople in Google Scholar, and there's like next to nothing in that. I have a digital library with over 30,000 volumes, and I got 0 hits. That's extraordinarily unusual. What that means is that basically scholars don't give this the time of day. And if you actually go out on the web and read about this, quote, lost chapter of the Acts of the Apostles, you're sort of going to discover why. Why it's just, yeah, we have better things to do, sort of stuff. So this lost chapter is known as the Sanini manuscript, basically because of where it's talked about. It's a short text that, again, supposedly is the missing last chapter of Acts. And it details Paul's journey to Britannia, where he preached to a tribe of Israelites on Ludgate Hill, okay, in Britannia. It's British Israelism, okay, which is nonsense for a host of reasons. And, people have published, I have in my paranormal collection here, my fringe pop collection in my library, I've got several, older books and, some, a few recent things on British Israelite religion. That's what it is. It's almost a cult, really, that more or less just tears this apart. So that's really why nobody pays any attention to it. If you wanted a little bit more for a description, you could go up to Google and put the name Edward Goodspeed, okay, spelled just like it sounds. His last name is Goodspeed. He was a Greek scholar and theologian in the early to mid 20th century. And he actually has a bit of a write-up on the 29th chapter of Acts. And I'm gonna read a little bit from it. But if you wanted, again, Goodspeed's take, this is just so hard to find anything on. So the fact that you can find even this much is, really noteworthy, because most people just don't have any time for this sort of stuff. So Goodspeed writes, for many years there has prevailed in certain quarters in England the idea that the Anglo-Saxon peoples are the lost 10 tribes of Israel, who were carried into captivity by Assyria in 722 BC and have never been heard of since. The holders of this British Israel position declare that the national seal of the United States bears witness to our identity with the tribe of Manasseh, the 13th tribe, while the royal arms of Britain recall those of Ephraim and Judah. George Washington and King George V are in fact lineal descendants of King David. Like, who knew? And elsewhere he writes, one of the most interesting claims is the discovery of the 29th chapter of the Acts of the Apostles, again, so-called. This long-lost chapter of the Acts of Apostles contained the account of Paul's journey in Spain and Britain. It is said by a recent publisher of it, Mr. T.G. Cole, to have been translated by the Oriental traveler C.S. Sannini from, quote, a Greek manuscript found in the archives at Constantinople and presented to him by the Sultan Abdul Ahmet, unquote. Sannini's translation, we are further informed, quote, was found interleaved in a copy of Sannini's Travels in Turkey and Greece and purchased at the sale of the library and effects of the late Right Honorable Sir John Newport in Ireland, in whose possession it had been for more than 30 years, with a copy of the firman of the Sultan of Turkey granting to C.S. Sannini permission to travel in all parts of the Ottoman dominions. Basically, he goes on and says, look, there isn't a single Greek text, there isn't a single Greek fragment of the book of Acts that has the stuff that's supposedly in Acts 29 in it. In other words, there's no primary source data. When you get things like this found in libraries, lost away, tucked, used as a bookmark for something else, that honestly, that's been done before by forgers. It's not this isn't like a single occurrence of this sort of thing. And so without that, and people by this point have gone to Constantinople and asked, hey, did this come from this? And did you guys ever, have this in your archives, or, is there any record of this? And it's no, and no. There's just nothing to go on here. And the fact that it's rooted in the mythology of British Israelite thinking, again, answers the question why you can do these broad database searches and nothing comes up. Again, no one has considered it even worth time to look at it. So I don't think a whole lot of it.
Ghostman wants to know, what is the meaning of Ecclesiastes 3:21?
Well, let's read the verse first so that people listening get a feel for this. So Ecclesiastes 3:21 says, I should back up a little bit, get a little context here. Verse 18, I said in my heart, with regard to the children of man, that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. For what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beast is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. I mean, everything dies, okay? They all have the same breath, the same life force in them. Man has no advantage over the beast, for all is vanity. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and to dust all return. Now here's verse 21. Who knows whether the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes down into the earth? Okay, so out of the gate, in that context, what verse 21 is asking is, who knows whether the spirit of man goes upward, like to God, returns to God, and the spirit of the beast doesn't? Because everything dies. Everything surrenders its spirit. But who knows, if humans are going to, have an everlasting destiny with their creator, and animals don't. I mean, who knows? So just generally, the verse kind of in context tells you really what the question being asked is. Now, I often get asked, what about commentaries? And for Ecclesiastes, my sort of go-to sources are Tremper Longman's commentary, the book of Ecclesiastes. It's part of the New International Commentary on the Old Testament. It's 1998. Erdman's, and Tremper, his specialty is wisdom literature. And the other one is Ian Provan. This is the NIV application commentary. It's a commentary on Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs. And I'm going to read a bit from Provan's in this case about these verses. He actually has a fairly lengthy discussion of this. So here we go. He writes, here in Ecclesiastes 3:18-22, however, the emphasis falls on the apparent lack of distinction between humans and animals, rather than between the wise and the foolish in death. Again, everything dies. God enables human beings to see that in respect of their ultimate fate, quote, that they are like the animals, 3:18, unquote. The similarity of human beings to the animals in this crucial respect is underlined in the fivefold use of Hebrew kol, which means all, in verses 19 and 20, which reads, all have the same breath. Everything is meaningless. Right? All go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust all return, unquote. So Provence says that all sentient life is comprised of the dust of the ground and the breath, ruach, again, often translated spirit, but same word for breath or wind, that all sentient life is comprised of dust of the ground and breath of life, placed together by God and destined to be separated at death, is the common view expressed or implied in the Old Testament. Kohelet, and that's the writer of Ecclesiastes, that's the Hebrew term for the preacher. Kohelet does not commit himself to any particular view on what happens after death in verse 21, although he is clearly familiar with the idea that when the human body and the breath/spirit are separated, the spirit, that spirit, does not go down with the body into the earth, as is the case of animals, but rather rises upward, presumably to God. His stance is agnostic, though. Who knows, he asks. He cannot be certain what will happen after death, and he asks the same question in 2:19. Because it is unseen, he rests content with that which, in the grace of God, he has come to see. Namely, that death renders pointless during life the quest for gain or advantage over the rest of creation. So again, it goes back to this all is vanity. We're all going to die. I mean, if you've read Ecclesiastes, this is going to sound real familiar, which is why the book ends, that this is the conclusion of the whole matter: fear God and keep his commandments. Because ultimately, our destiny after death is going to be in the hands of God. So that's basically his take on this. And so when he asks in verse 21, who knows? Again, he's basically saying, I don't really know what happens, like after we die, and in the Old Testament, as we've had episodes on this before, specifically the Psalms of Korah and some of the other Korahite things in the Old Testament, you do have a widespread notion that everybody dies, the righteous die, the wicked die, they all go to the same place, they all go to the underworld, the realm of the dead, so on and so forth. But there's this hope in various texts that the righteous will be taken out of Sheol, out of the underworld, to be with the Lord. Now, this is an idea that's going to get a lot more attention, later, in the Second Temple period, New Testament, so on and so forth. But the hope was that this is the destiny of the righteous, that they don't stay there. So this is what prompts the question, this sort of ambiguity or uncertainty. But it would be saying too much to say that the Old Testament does not have a hope of the positive afterlife. That's an overstatement that you'll often hear. And people will often go to passages like this, but then they'll skip the Psalms and other places that say the opposite, that do express a clear hope. So this is where he's at. He doesn't know. And if you read, again, Ecclesiastes, he basically goes through all these questions of life and all the facets of life and basically shows that, all is vanity because we're all going to die. And in the end, what we need to do is we need to be on the Lord's side. We need to be righteous. We fear God and keep his commandments. And then our destiny is in his hands. So in a nutshell, that's really the thought he's expressing here. It's very much in concert with kind of Old Testament thinking about the afterlife to wonder, to at least express the question, but also, express the hope.
Ghostman has one more question. Mike said before that 1,000 years is too short for the millennium, the global Eden. What does he make of the new heavens and earth? Is that just part of the global Eden or something later?
Well, I think that the new earth is the new global Eden. The new heaven and earth, again, that phrase borrows the language of Genesis 1. It's the totality of material creation that can be experienced in some way by humans. Even we can see the heavens. We may not be able to live there or live in the sea, but we can see these things. So we experience the heavens and the earth at least in some way. So this is an expression of the totality of creation, again, that humans can experience with their senses. All of that is made new. So that is the new global Eden. That is, those two things are